This is the brand new Google Pixel 9 Pro XL, and this is the Samsung S24 Ultra. In this video, we will test the photo and video capabilities of these two top camera phones on the market. Alright friends, let's go!
Hey friends, this video was translated using a neural network, so the sound quality isn't the best. If you want to listen to the original sound from a smartphone and hear the audio recording test, just follow the link in the description to our original video.
Both smartphones are currently charged 100%, and now let's see which one lasts longer. So, well friends, we have our first test. This is the front camera, 4K at 60 frames per second. Google Pixel 9 Pro XL, and 4K at 60 frames per second on the Samsung S24 Ultra. Right now we're shooting against the sun, shining really brightly on me. It'll be really interesting to see how our smartphones perform now. By the way, on the Pixel I can see that we're shooting at 1x. It feels like the angle is just a bit wider. This is how I transferred the picture. I'm currently shooting against the sun. How is the dynamic range in general? How is my face visible? Can it be seen, or is it completely problematic?
The Pixel did a better job against the sun. It perfectly preserved the sky, but the Samsung completely knocked it out. Pixel better against sun, but skin tone sickly, blurred, worse detail.
And this is what the picture looks like when shooting at 1.4x on the Google Pixel. Most likely the focal length is the same on the Samsung. So now it'll be interesting to see how they perform against the sun while we're shooting.
With a 1.4x zoom, the Pixel again works better against the sun, but the image quality and skin tone are alarming. The skin looks somewhat sickly and blurred, and the sharpness and detail are significantly worse than on the Samsung. The Pixel holds stabilization really well, but I can't say the same for the Samsung. The background shakes quite a bit. This is even more noticeable when you place the two images side by side. At 1.4x zoom, the Pixel again has no issues with stabilization. It holds steady.
It can only shoot HDR images in 4K at 30 frames per second on the front camera. That is, it turns out that if we turn on 4K 60 frames per second, HDR does not work. And this is what the picture looks like on the Samsung S24 Ultra with HDR10 Plus enabled, while on the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL, I've turned off 60 frames per second and set it to 30 frames per second. On the front camera, 4K at 30 frames per second and turned on HDR. We can see how HDR performs on both smartphones. On the Samsung, it's HDR10 Plus, but honestly, I hardly ever use it. I usually turn it off because it makes post-processing really difficult. And on the Pixel, we currently have HDR enabled, but it feels like the frame rate is definitely not 30 frames per second right now. It seems to me that the frame rate is probably around 20 frames per second. It feels like it's losing frames. That's how HDR works on the Pixel and HDR10 Plus on the Samsung. Well, it feels like it's dropping frames. Well, that's exactly how HDR works on the Pixel and HDR10 Plus on the Samsung. I'm going to stop now and specifically shoot against the light. Right now, the sun is shining really brightly behind me. And now we can see how our smartphones are handling it.
With the sun in front, the Pixel again performs better, but the overall quality of the HDR video from the front camera is quite disappointing. The Samsung clearly has better image quality and colors, even though we edited the originals pretty much the same. The front camera has 42 MP on the Pixel, while the Samsung S24 Ultra has 12 megapixels.
And now we're shooting portrait video. The Samsung S24 Ultra easily shoots 4K portrait video at 30 frames per second with a blur effect. So we can see that the entire background is blurred. Unfortunately, the Google Pixel can't do that at all on the front camera. At the time of filming this video, the background blur mode is only available on the main lens.
Samsung definitely gets a separate thumbs up from me for its portrait video on the front camera. The new Pixel has 3 lenses. We have an ultra-wide and a telephoto lens here, both at 48 megapixels. The main camera has 50 megapixels. The Samsung has a main camera with a whopping 200 megapixels, 2 telephoto lenses 50 and 10 megapixels, and the ultra-wide 12 megapixels.
So guys, right now we have the ultra-wide lens. 0.5x on the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL shooting in 4K at 60 frames per second. Accordingly, on the Samsung S24 Ultra, we also have 4K 60 FPS, 0.6x ultra-wide lens. And let's see how our smartphones cope in general. It's tough conditions. The sun is blasting right into the lens. And right now, if you look, the sun is shining on me. This is what the picture looks like. It's really blinding me. But overall, this is how the picture looks on both smartphones.
The ultra-wide lens performs similarly in terms of quality and dynamic range, whether shooting against the sun or with the sun on both smartphones. The main difference is in color reproduction. The Pixel has a yellowish tint to the picture, which is especially noticeable on the skin. I like the colors on the Samsung more. The stabilization on the new model is also quite impressive, just like on the Samsung. Both keep the image steady and the background doesn't shake. Well done. I'm flipping the cameras. Here, by the way, the Pixel shows a slight advantage in sharpness and detail, but it's really very slight. As for stabilization, here again both demonstrate a smooth picture.
Right now, we're shooting with the main lens at 1x on the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL, still in 4K at 60 FPS with HDR turned off. And on the Samsung S24 Ultra, it's the same. 4K at 60 FPS with the main lens at 1x, also without HDR10+. It'll be really interesting to see how the dynamic range performs since the sun is hitting right into the lens. I'm curious to find out which smartphone handles this better.
Though the sky was overexposed on Samsung's front camera, not for Pixel's main camera. For quality they're similar, due to varying color reproduction. While running, both smartphones performed excellently, keeping steady images. I'm filming everything around, and here the Pixel captures the path and greenery better, and the stabilization worked equally well. When shooting with 2x zoom, the S24 Ultra has better quality and detail than the Pixel 9 Pro XL, but it struggles with stabilization and shakes with every step. Both struggle during the run in their own ways. The Pixel has a noticeable jelly effect, while the Samsung has quite a bit of shaking.
And this is what the picture looks like on the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL, 4K 30 frames per second. HDR can only be shot at 30 frames per second, while the Samsung S24 Ultra can shoot 4K at 60 frames per second. HDR, can it handle it like the Samsung S24 Ultra? Dentro, at 60 frames per second, HDR 10, and these are the tough conditions. The sun is really shining down on us here, and accordingly, it will be interesting to see if the image quality has changed at all. And this is how we're shooting in the light. The sun is shining on me. And how does the picture look?
In terms of quality, both images look more or less the same. When shooting in good light, the color reproduction is also very similar. The difference is only noticeable against the sun. On the Pixel, my face turned out lighter, while on the Samsung, it looks darker.
And now on the Google Pixel 9 Pro, I turned on video enhancement. Let's see if anything changes, especially for the sky. Let's see if anything changes at all. On the Samsung, I'm continuing to shoot in 4K, 60 frames per second, HDR 10+.
There's a strange story happening with Google's Video Boost mode. We ended up with two files from each video in the source files. First 4K, desaturated file without stabilization. The second colored stabilized file is in Full HD. The second option definitely looks improved. But where is the promised 4K? We found the answer to this question on Reddit. I didn't know these details at the time of filming, and I was actually hoping that the advertised features would work right out of the box. But overall, don't repeat my mistakes. We're comparing the Pixel's Full HD with Samsung's 4K. But overall, the picture is quite good, although it does fall a bit short in sharpness and detail compared to its competitor.
And now we have the portrait video recording. Unfortunately, the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL can only shoot portrait video, meaning the background blur effect, in Full HD on the main 1x lens, while the Samsung S24 Ultra does this effortlessly in 4K at 30 frames.
The video with blur looks good on both smartphones, and I would even say that the Full HD on the Pixel here is on par with the 4K on the Samsung. By the way, as soon as I turned away, the S24 Ultra blurred me, but the Pixel didn't. Good job. The skin tone turned out a bit different. The Pixel has a yellowish tint, while the Samsung looks more natural. Both phones have focus issues.
We have a blur effect of 75, so that's almost maximum blur. So you can turn it up to 100. The Samsung S24 Ultra, we have a blur effect of 5. You can raise it up to 7. So I think the blur effect is roughly equivalent to an aperture of f2, f1.8. This is the picture we get with the blur effect.
Samsung shows artifacts and loses focus. Pixel is fine. Pixel handled blur well, slightly blurring the face, while Samsung dropped frames. We're testing the long-range capabilities of the smartphones. The ultra-wide camera provides roughly similar quality both overall and in detail. The same story goes for the main camera without zooming. At 3x zoom, the Samsung provides a clearer and more readable image, which makes sense since it has a separate telephoto lens for that. 5x zoom. Both have optical zoom, but once again, the S24 Ultra clearly performs better here. The small details are quite readable, unlike on the Pixel. The 15x zoom also performs better on the S24 Ultra. The letters are clearer and easier to read. The last zoom, at 20x again, the Pixel falls behind its competitor, although not by a huge margin.
It's already quite twilight here, and it's really interesting to hear how the smartphones are recording the ambient sounds and voices in this unique setting. The sound, accordingly, is recorded on the front microphone of the Samsung S24 Ultra, which is known for its advanced audio capturing capabilities. Right now, we're recording video with the advanced speech enhancement feature activated on the Google Pixel 9, which significantly improves the audio quality by reducing background noise and enhancing the speaker's voice. Samsung S24 Ultra, with its state-of-the-art technology, continues to set a high standard in the smartphone industry. We are doing professional video recording with the front camera at 4K 30 FPS, and the front microphone is activated.
Pixel has desynchronization and poor video quality. Pixel's sound is inferior to Samsung. Voice isolation mode is ineffective against wind. As for the sound, unfortunately, the Pixel couldn't surpass the Samsung here. Even in the voice selection mode, the wind blows quite strongly, and in general, there is a feeling that this selection is not at all different from regular audio. In my opinion, the S24 Ultra performs much better in front microphone recording mode. Pixel allows us to shoot slow-mo up to 240 frames per second, but only in full HD. On the Samsung, we can shoot 120 frames, 4K and 240 frames in full HD. And of course, 4K looks better in terms of detail and image quality. I prefer the picture from the Pixel at 240 frames in full HD. Samsung has more noise, the skin looks odd, and the quality is worse.
The Google Pixel 9 Pro XL has a panorama mode for both video and photos. In video mode, it looks like it's in slow motion.
In this mode, the Pixel records slow motion footage in 4K with good stabilization. 60 frames are sufficient for most tasks, allowing smooth pans. But for most tasks, this will be more than enough, and you will be able to shoot beautiful smooth wiring. It's an interesting mode. I haven't seen anything like it anywhere. Thumbs up for the Pixel. In macro mode, the videos turned out to be very similar in quality, but quite different in color. The Pixel's picture is brighter, while Samsung's is darker and more saturated. The time-lapse in Pixel turned out better, the quality and detail are higher, the colors are more saturated. But the common problem for both is exposure jumps, which are really annoying to the eyes. The light gets less, smartphones tighten the exposure, and we see this unpleasant flickering that simply ruins the entire time-lapse. I couldn't figure out how to turn this off or adjust it, so if you could let me know in the comments, that would be awesome.
By the way, the Google Pixel is impressing us again. It always turns off the screen when we shoot a time-lapse, while Samsung has gone to a half-asleep mode. But with the Pixel, the fact that it completely turns off the screen seems very smart to me. Well, night has fallen, And now we're going to test the photo and video capabilities of these smartphones in low light conditions. So, well friends, we have just amazing lighting here, nighttime lighting with gorgeous little lights and fountains. And it's really interesting to see how the smartphones will perform. The lighting is behind me right now, and even on the Pixel everything looks just fine. Let's listen to how the sound will perform because there's a little breeze blowing right now. I like the picture on both smartphones.
When there is insufficient lighting at the Pixel, the front camera completely falls apart. It's not that Samsung is pleasing to the eye, but still, its situation is not so dire. In good lighting, the Pixel performs well, better than the S24. For stabilization, the new model was smoother than Samsung, but still not great. In terms of stabilization, the new model performed more smoothly than Samsung, but the result still wasn't great. There's quite a bit of shaking here, and the blurriness is significant.
At the top of the device, we have the advanced 4K lens capable of capturing video at 30 frames per second, which is a standard feature on the Pixel. This lens is particularly known for its high resolution and ability to capture fine details, making it ideal for both professional and casual photography.
In terms of sharpness, there's really no difference at all except for color reproduction. Once again, the picture from Samsung is darker and more vibrant than that from the Pixel. The stabilization performed equally poorly on both cameras. The background is jittery, especially the illuminated signs, and the shaking is quite strong. I'm filming everything around, and here it's exactly the same, with equally mediocre picture quality from both smartphones and equally weak stabilization, unfortunately.
The main lens, 1X, how does the face look like? How does the lighting behind me look? I think everything should just be top-notch. Everything should be very beautiful and pleasant.
With the main camera, there's still no difference in image quality. Main difference, color reproduction. Prefer Samsung's picture. Skin tones and background look better. The stabilization worked more smoothly, the S24 Ultra. This is especially noticeable with the lights and signs in the background. When filming everything around, the difference in color reproduction becomes more apparent. The Pixel makes the picture yellow, Samsung's is cooler. As for stabilization, here again the S24 Ultra produced significantly smoother video.
Right now, the enhanced video is activated on the Pixel, so let's see how it performs in this improved mode.
We've got improved videos here again in full HD, and while this mode was still relevant during the day, it definitely isn't in the dark. The picture is noisy, shakes even while moving, and in the stabilization test it flies from side to side. Maybe it would be better in 4K, but it is what it is.
And now we're shooting with the blur effect. Unfortunately, the Pixel 9 Pro XL can only use the blur effect on the main lens. The Pixel can only shoot in full HD. Samsung S24 Ultra 4K 30 frames per second with a blur effect. How does it perform? I rated the blur effect to 5. Samsung handles this easily in 4K at 30 frames per second.
Pixel has less noise. 9 Pro XL pale, S24 Ultra vibrant. Samsung's stabilization better. In terms of color, the 9 Pro XL is again a bit pale and light, while the S24 Ultra is darker and more vibrant. Samsung handled stabilization better. Let's look at the background, at the signs. The Pixel is shaking.
And this is how the blur effect works. We're walking together. We're shooting in 4K at 30 frames per second. The Samsung S24 Ultra. Portrait video on the main camera. The blur on the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL is set to 75. So it's also got a strong blur. It keeps me in focus, for example, while Anya is blurred. Or the other way around. In general, we'll take a look at it later on a bigger computer. I'm stepping back from her a bit now. And now let's see how blur is working. Now I'm turning away. Here's the shot we're getting.
With two people in the frame, the result was interesting. The Pixel occasionally lost track of mine with noticeable blur. Samsung kept me in focus but didn't recognize the second face, and it looks pretty bad. On the other hand, Samsung kept me in focus consistently, but it completely refused to recognize the second face, even when I turned away. The Pixel again shows noticeable blur, but there are no dropped frames. The S24 Ultra's second take was smooth, without any dropped frames. In low light zoom, Samsung slightly leads with the ultra-wide lens handling light sources.
When we activate the video mode, it tells me there's a concept of video enhancement. This is how beautifully it corrects the colors. You can also shoot video in 8K resolution. Well, it's just fantastic. Well, let's turn on the video enhancement, of course. How beautiful it is here. Yeah, but as soon as I turn on this video enhancement, the picture immediately switches to night mode, and I need to shoot with the ultra-wide lens, so I'm turning this thing off now.
Let's take a look at the zoom in low light conditions. Samsung has a slight advantage with the ultra-wide lens when it comes to handling light sources. It's similar on the main camera. The letters are preserved better, they're clearer and not as overexposed. The 3x optical zoom connects on Samsung, and it's clear that it shows a higher quality image here. The 5x optical zoom on both smartphones shows that Samsung wins again in terms of detail and video clarity. At 10x, they look similar, but the S24 Ultra preserves details better. At 15x, Samsung shows more detail, while Pixel blurs. At 20x, Samsung again outperforms Pixel. We're focusing on image quality, not stabilization or color.
Guys, we came to test the long-range capabilities of the cameras. As soon as I activated video mode, Google Pixel immediately suggested I shoot some night video. Here's what it looks like. The most interesting thing is that he wrote that to shoot this video taken at night, it will take some time. Well, let's give it a try.
Therefore, you can take a 4K file that the Pixel camera shot before processing and compression to full HD. That would be fairer. And I can say that in this form, the 9 Pro XL really provides a higher quality, more detailed image with less noise. And here are some interesting things you can do with long exposure. Not perfect, but if you put in some effort and take a few tries, you can definitely get some really cool shots. Another cool mode is panning, which is basically shooting while in motion. The truth is, the results don't always turn out neat. Another interesting mode is called Great Shot. It's basically a burst photo, where the smartphone takes a lot of shots and you can choose the best one from all of them.
It can create a cool mode called Add Me, so the girls are all set up to take some pictures like this. They're making this cool creative shot. I'm specifically choosing a spot here, leaving the place where I'll be, and taking a photo. Alright, now the girls are coming over here and now I'm doing the same.
Before we move too far away from the camera features, I'd like to briefly go over them on Samsung as well. There are different types of isolating a person or object from the background. You can make the background black and white, color it, or even remove it altogether, for example. Here, I would also like to note the post-processing capabilities that Google Pixel offers right inside the smartphone. So you can blur the background in a portrait shot and adjust the blur strength, remove unwanted objects, tweak the background saturation, and correct the lighting. I wouldn't say that Google Photos can replace Lightroom, but it has enough functions for good photo processing. Let's evaluate the color reproduction of the photos. Ultra-wide shots on the Pixel appear sharper, more contrasted and vibrant, though Samsung enhances the sky more in the last photo. Main camera shots are nearly identical, slightly warmer on the Pixel. At 2x zoom, the Pixel's photo is cooler, Samsung's warmer. Pixel's selfies are quite saturated and contrasty, Samsung's are worse. By the way, the new feature allows us to enable photo retouching right in the camera, but you need to be careful with this setting, or else the face can end up looking too smoothed out. In portrait mode, the 9 Pro XL performed better for selfies, showing noticeably fewer issues with the blur boundary, although it still had some minor flaws. We're taking portrait shots with the main camera. The first photo looks pretty good overall, but the Pixel did a better job with the second one, while Samsung struggled with my daughter Maya's long hair. The next picture is similar. On the 9 Pro XL, we can also take a 50 megapixel portrait with 5x zoom, but the flaws in the hair are noticeably more pronounced than in the 12 megapixel photo from Samsung. Speaking of colors, I prefer the Pixels. The S24 Ultra's skin tone looks pale with a yellow tint. Our spoon fork test perfectly shows the quality of blur algorithms in portrait mode photos. And what do we see? Pixel blurred fork. Samsung didn't. Photo similar. And in all the photos it blurred the fork, while the Samsung keeps it better and looks neater. The photos of food and drinks turned out very similar. I like all the shots. Both smartphones performed well, but here's where Samsung has the advantage. It has this color highlighting mode. It's great for both portraits and food. It turns out really cool.
Let's see how much we can zoom in for a macro shot. For this, we zoom in up to 8 times. That is, it turns out you can safely approach up to 8. So basically, I would say that the telephoto lens works really well on the Google Pixel. Now let's see. We have with Samsung. This is what we end up with. Even at 60x, it turns out pretty good. Cool.
We're testing the zoom in photo mode. I don't see the point in stopping at the ultra-wide and main camera. As up to 2x zoom, all the photos turned out very similar with no clear advantage for either side. Only at 3x zoom, when using the telephoto lens on the Samsung, it has a slight advantage. The photo is clearer and less noisy. At 5x zoom, both telephoto lenses are working, but once again, the S24 Ultra delivers a higher quality result. At 10x zoom, the Samsung again has better detail and less noise, and it's the same story at 30x. The S24 Ultra can zoom up to 100x. I wouldn't call this zoom range particularly usable, but even so, we can pick out and recognize some text.
Pixel on the official website indicated that their super and telephoto lenses take maximum 48 megapixel photos. However, when checking the photo parameters in both Lightroom and Premiere Pro, they turned out to be 50 megapixel photos. If you know why this is the case, please let us know in the comments, friends.
With Samsung, we can only take 50 megapixel shots starting from the main camera, while with the Pixel, they're available even on the ultra-wide. At 1x, there's no difference between the photos. Zooming in, 2x, the photo turned out clearer and of better quality with the 9 Pro XL, but it didn't hold the lead for long and lost ground at 5x zoom. The detail is weak, and there's a lot of noise. Samsung's results are better. The S24 Ultra also performed a bit better at 10x, although even its result was generally weak. On the Pixel, we can zoom in up to 30x, but the photo turns out really disappointing, and even at 12 megapixels it looks better. With the main camera on the Samsung, we can take photos at a whopping 200 megapixels. Do these photos have any advantages over the 50 megapixel ones from the new model? At first glance, no, but maybe just a bit more clarity. At 2x zoom, the Pixel's result is generally better than Samsung's. But to be fair, at 5x, the S24 Ultra's 200 megapixel photos look significantly better than the 50 megapixel ones from the competitor. Raw photos are raw photos straight from the camera without any processing. And then in post-production you can remove highlights, noise, and color it as you wish without losing quality. Pixel's RAW plus JPEG mode allows dual format capture. Pixels are definitely better quality. Some shots on Samsung, no matter how hard I tried, just couldn't be salvaged. But here's how regular photos from Pixel and RAW ones look after editing in Lightroom for contrast. Well, the shooting day has come to an end. The shooting night is starting. Let's start with light transmission. On the ultra-wide, I personally prefer the Pixel's results more. The photo is brighter, I can be seen better and clearer. The colors are more vibrant, the bulbs on the garland look more interesting. The first photo is at 1x. The result is very similar, but the Samsung has slightly higher saturation. The second photo clearly turned out better with the 9 Pro XL. The detail is noticeably higher. Good job with the lights. Great photo. At 3x zoom, Samsung performed better. If we look at the water and trees, the Pixel is way too noisy, but the full zoom test will be a bit later. We're testing selfies in low light. The Pixel's photos are vibrant and bright. The skin looks better than on the Samsung, and overall, the quality and detail seem higher, but there's quite a bit of noise in the sky. I took a photo against the light. There's a strong glare on both smartphones, but you can clearly see the Pixel's advantage in detail here. The face, hair, houses in the background, grass, everything looks better on the new model. I like the selfie portraits from both smartphones, but in terms of color reproduction, the 9 Pro XL definitely looks better. I like the skin, background, and night sky more on it. We're taking portrait photos with the main camera module. I also like the results here from both, but in terms of color, the Pixels look cooler to me again. Let's test the zoom in low light. Samsung's ultra-wide is better. The signs aren't as overexposed as they are on the Pixel. Main camera at 1x. Here, on the contrary, the 9 Pro XL has slightly better photos with higher detail and clarity. At 2x zoom, the detail quality is a bit weak on both, but the S24 Ultra handled the illuminated signs better again. 3x zoom. On the Samsung, the telephoto lens activates, and of course, thanks to that, the smartphone gets a clearer and more readable result. At 5x, the telephoto lens works on both. The Samsung is better in detail, 10 times zoom, and even without zooming in, you can see that the Pixel's photos are much noisier, although it almost matches the Samsung in detail. The maximum 30x zoom on the 9 Pro XL worked better. We can even read the small text, while the S24 Ultra just blurred it out. On the Samsung, we can zoom into 100x, but that doesn't give us any advantage here. I also took a 50 megapixel photo on the 9 Pro XL, and of course that photo looks better than a regular 12 megapixel one.
I was really impressed with the Pixel 9 Pro XL, especially that it can take photos with a 1-second exposure even on the ultra-wide lens. For example, now they are starting to film here. We have a lot of signs here, and Samsung is just filming. I take photos in Pro mode, I shoot so that the roughs are in the photo. I take the photo, the shooting starts right away. And on the Pixel, I press this, and it takes 2 seconds. Even on the ultra-wide lens, the Pixel does a 2-second exposure, which is really cool, considering that I'm also shooting in Pro mode at 50 megapixels, capturing both RAW and JPEG. The ultra-wide lens allows for a broader field of view, making it perfect for landscape photography and capturing more of the scene in a single shot.
In low light, the RAW shots in Pro mode on the Samsung are not a viable option at all. No matter how much we tried to fix the shots, we just couldn't get rid of the noise from the light. The Pixel, on the other hand, produces very decent and high-quality photos, whether on the ultra-wide or at 30x zoom. For comparison, here are some more shots in different conditions. The new model performs much better everywhere than the S24 Ultra. And if we compare regular photos and processed RAW shots from the Pixel, there won't be much of a difference, by the way.
The Google Pixel has a very interesting mode called long exposure. It works automatically at different focal lengths. By using long exposure, you can get beautiful photos with blurred headlights. Meanwhile, on the Samsung S24 Ultra, we have to use the Expert RAW mode, which is additional software that you can download, and accordingly you have to set the exposure here. So I set it manually myself, and it's only thanks to this that we get the effect of blurred lights. The results turned out to be different for us.
We got different results. On the Pixel, the road ended up blurry along with the headlights, while on the Samsung, only the headlights are clear. What do you like more? You decide for yourself. But of course, the 9 Pro XL has this mode conveniently built right into the camera, so you don't need to install any extra apps to achieve similar effects.
Samsung has a really cool feature called Expert RAW, which allows you to take astrophotography shots. Now let's see if we can take astrophotography shots like that on the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL.
And here are such wonderful photos you can get as a result. Both photos are good, but the Pixel's quality is still higher, and in the second photo, the sky looks more beautiful too. I took photos of the moon at different zoom levels, and while the results at 10x are just okay, at 30x and 100x, the moon looks really cool on Samsung. Unfortunately, you can't get anywhere near that kind of result on the Pixel. The flagship is equipped with Google's proprietary Tensor G4 processor, while Samsung has the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 for Galaxy. Performance measurements were conducted in the AnTuTu benchmark, and here the S24 Ultra significantly outperformed the Pixel. We'll also take measurements in the Geekbench test. Here, similarly, Samsung has outperformed the new model in all aspects. There are legends on the internet about the terrible PWM on the Pixel, and unfortunately, I have to confirm that they are true. At 100% brightness, the PWM coefficient already exceeded all recommended values. We lower the brightness to half, and here it's just a nightmare. At 20% brightness, situation didn't improve much. We're measuring the Wi-Fi speed, each smartphone one by one. In the end, Samsung showed results significantly better than the Pixel.
Before diving into the details, let's start, as always, by taking a moment to thoroughly discuss and explore the numerous advantages and benefits of this Google Pixel 9 Pro XL.
What can I say about the pros? The smartphone performs well in photo mode, and I personally like the ability to take 50 megapixel RAW photos.
The RAW shots on this smartphone seem to me to be some of the highest quality on the market. This smartphone definitely comes out on top because it has 50 megapixel RAW shots. This smartphone excels in taking high quality daytime and nighttime RAW shots. At night, it likely has no competitors, capturing RAW shots with long exposure, maximizing light capture. This feature is rare in other smartphones, especially in automatic mode. mode. This deserves a thumbs up for this smartphone.
In video mode, the front camera did a decent job of stabilizing and shooting against the light.
This smartphone also has a very good portrait shooting with a background blur effect on the main lens. Unfortunately, it's only in Full HD here. But the quality from this smartphone is actually quite decent.
The panorama mode is interesting. It's slow motion in 4K.
And in photo mode, the panoramic effect works very interestingly. It highlights the subject and blurs the entire background. This smartphone also comes with a pretty good battery. In our tests, this smartphone lasted longer than the Samsung S24 Ultra. But another plus that I would highlight about this smartphone is definitely its design. Overall, the smartphone is beautifully designed. I think they were most inspired by Apple. The smartphone actually looks good. But what I didn't like was that for some reason they moved the power button to the top and the volume button to the bottom. I absolutely don't understand why this was done. I'm used to taking photos with one hand, for example. I press the power button twice and then take a photo. I think placing the power button that high up isn't the best idea. But overall, I believe that Google has its own signature style, and I really like the camera block. I think it's stylish, cool, and it looks modern. Another thing I liked is that the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL has a really cool feature called Add Me. If you want to take a picture with a large group and have everyone in the frame, this smartphone will be a great help.
The first and most important thing is that this smartphone is rough around the edges. We have seen this clearly today using the camera as an example. Some features either don't work or only work with a connection to Google Photos, which you have to pay for separately and buy a lot of storage. Otherwise, some functionality will simply be unavailable to you. In the test for PWM pixel ratio at medium brightness, it shot over 100%. Otherwise, some functionality will simply be unavailable to you.
At first, I didn't connect my main Google account, and as soon as I ran out of the 15 gigabytes, which is the basic storage space on any Google account, the smartphone kept bombarding me with messages. You're out of storage, upgrade, increase, do something, otherwise you can't save your photos, so it's impossible to process them, and this is of course just an epic fail. I would also like to point out a huge downside: the front camera performance in low light conditions. How could Google allow such a fail that the shooting on the front camera, which is actually a good front camera, performs so poorly in low light? The camera itself is good, but in low light conditions, it just takes terrible shots. The next point again concerns the front camera, and it's about shooting portrait videos. This smartphone absolutely cannot do that. While the Samsung S24 Ultra shoots on the front camera 30 frames per second, amazing video with background blur. At this time, the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL can't do this at all, the video that this front camera records. The image quality, of course, raises a lot of questions. Another negative thing I would like to point out is that this smartphone can only shoot 120 frames per second in Full HD. And unfortunately, Full HD at 120 frames per second falls far short of 4K at 120 frames per second on the Samsung. The sound recording quality on the Samsung S24 Ultra sounded much better than on the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL. Although there is a voice enhancement mode here, which is supposed to highlight the voice, but unfortunately the sound recording quality with the enhancement effect was absolutely no different from the sound recording quality without that effect. Now let's talk about the smartphone itself. And the first, of course, is a huge downside of this smartphone: the super weak processor. In Antutu and Geekbench, it lags far behind the Samsung S24 Ultra, considering that this smartphone was released 8 months earlier. And apparently, because of this, Google can't implement proper portrait video shooting on the front camera. Well, most likely the smartphone just doesn't have enough power. The next downside is the screen.
In the PWM coefficient test, the pixel at medium brightness flew over 100%. If your eyes are sensitive to PWM, you should steer clear of this smartphone.
This is the most stunning screen of all the smartphones I have tested. Personally, I don't see the flicker, so it's not that critical for me. But considering that high flicker can negatively affect vision, I wouldn't recommend buying this smartphone.
Another downside is the packaging. Google follows all the market trends and includes only a charging cable with their quite expensive smartphone.
Another thing I didn't like about the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL is that Google has started to copy Apple very closely, and even in this basic version of their Android, which is pretty raw, they made terrible change by default. I'm a fan of Android smartphones. I find it more convenient, and if I want to go back, I just tap the back arrow at the bottom of the screen and I go back. In the middle, I have a lot of apps opening up at once, and if I tap the square on the right side at the bottom of the screen, it opens an app that I can launch right now, which is currently in my RAM. Personally, I find it much more pleasant and convenient to use this kind of navigation on Android interface. This is where Google has stood out and done it like the iPhone, and it's unclear why Google is doing this at all. Well friends, let's sum it up. Would I buy this Google Pixel 9 Pro XL smartphone now? And I would definitely say no. And for that kind of money, you can definitely get a much better smartphone
The same Samsung S24 Ultra will perform much better in many modes. Who would I recommend buying this smartphone? And it's only for those people who love taking photos in RAW, just photos and only in RAW. Friends, if you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments what you think of the new Google Pixel 9 Pro XL. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and see you all later.